Violet here, second generation homeschooling mom of 3. I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and an infant. Today I wanted to share with you the phonics program that we used and the phonics program that I wish I discovered sooner. So let's get into it. So the phonics program that we used, and I used it for my 7-year-old and I've used it part of the way for my 5-year-old, is Phonics Pathways and then the companion book Reading Pathways. So I'm going to take you through this first. I do really like these books. I think they're very straightforward. I think they're laid out really well. Here's the contents. They go all the way through the end of, I think it's like 2nd grade phonics, so multi-syllable words. There's a little bit of instruction in the beginning about how to use this book, how to use it for spelling as well if you would like, although we use all about spelling. They have this bookmark that you can print out for your kid to help them remember the short vowel sounds. There's a short vowel game. And then where the book actually starts, where you start working with the student, is here, learning the short vowel sounds. And here's a little bit of instruction for doing each of the pages. You can see there isn't really very much instruction on the actual pages. There's a little bit, but a lot of this, you as the parent are going to have to decide how to teach your kid. So I like how simple the pages are. These are more, you can read this to your kid, but I would usually read this and then summarize. I do like the little games they have sprinkled in here. It makes it a little bit more multi-sensory. And I like the way that they give instruction for blending, learning the beginning blends. I felt like that was very straightforward. And this train game was especially helpful for my daughter because she struggled with blending. My son did not at all. I never taught him how to blend. He, I guess, absorbed it from listening to me teach my daughter and just one day sat down and started sounding out words. So that was surprising and pretty incredible to me because my daughter did struggle with blending a bit. And then this train thing really helped her kind of grasp that concept and move on from there. So I like how simple the pages are. I like how systematic this is. They move on to 3 sound words. I like the pyramids that it includes in here. This really builds reading fluency. I like the way they mix in some review. My daughter thought these sentences when we got to this point were pretty silly. When we got to this point in this book, we were working up towards reading this much at a time. So we would read the top part of the page, and then the next day we come back and do the bottom part of the page. These aren't really divided into lessons for you. Depending upon your kid, you could read a page a day. Maybe you could read more than a page a day. But when my daughter was at this stage, and my son as well, this was a little bit too much for them to read in one day, so we would usually do half a page. So I'll just sort of flip through the rest of the book. You can see that it builds to longer words, gets to different vowel teams, diphthongs, all that. Contractions. One of the things I really like about this book is at the end, trying to not flip past it. They have this whole section on multisyllable words. And this was really helpful for my daughter because multisyllable words can be, and then this is the end of the book, can be daunting for a child. And then at the back here, they have blank games that if you want to do these games, but with some of the other sounds, you can make your own game boards. So they have some in here already with words printed, and then in the back, blank ones for you to make your own. And then I combined this program with Reading Pathways. It's a companion book, and it's all Fluency Pyramids. So they don't tell you anymore how to combine the 2 books. So I went through and matched up the 2 books on my own. So once my daughter had learned how to read all the short vowel, everything she would need to read this pyramid, I wrote actually in my Phonics Pathway book, okay, now go do pyramids on the pages 3 through 6 or whatever, as the cue to me to move over to this book. And I would alternate back and forth. So one day we do Phonics Pathways and then the next day we do a pyramid in here. So the pyramids get more complex as you go along. And I really liked these for building reading fluency and building reading stamina. So you start to read more words before you start the pyramid. The pyramids get bigger. And then the end of this book is all multisyllable word pyramids where you start with part of the word and then you add more to it and then you have the long word and then there's 2 long words per sentence. This is really good for my daughter as well. There's a bunch of them. There's almost 40 pages of them. And then there's really long pyramids, kind of some more silly pyramids. And then that was it. That was it for this book. So I really liked adding this to our phonics. The other thing that we added once my kids were at that point were these Bob books, phonics books. And so when we didn't have a pyramid to alternate with Phonics Pathways, we'd alternate reading from Phonics Pathways and then reading a Bob book. And then eventually, as they built more stamina and fluency, we would read from Phonics Pathways and do a Bob book every day, or read a pyramid and do a Bob book every day. Sorry, I'm trying to grab one near the back and they're kind of slippery. So they make smaller versions of these, but I liked these bigger versions. These also are systematically introduce phonics, and the sentences get more complex as you go along. So some people do use these as their complete phonics program, but I don't think that would have been sufficient for my kids. And then the other thing that we add to our phonics is just phonics readers for whatever my kids are interested in. So my son really likes Spider-Man, so somebody was giving these away. So we got these Spider-Man things, phonics readers, and he has read them over and over and over again. And so that repeat reading is not really something my kids like to do, but it really does help build fluency. So these have been good for him for that. Now, the program that I wish I'd found sooner before I'd done Phonics Pathways with my kids is Reading Reflex. And the reason why, I think Phonics Pathways is good, but Phonics Pathways is a print-to-speech approach, which means you look at the way the word is written out and you say, okay, the A says this sound, the T says this sound, and it's all the print is telling you what to say. Reading Reflex, on the other hand, is a speech-to-print approach, which means you hear a sound and then you look at the different ways it could be written. And we'll go through this in a minute. If you're interested in the difference between speech to print and print to speech, Moira from Rooted in Language just made a video about it recently. I'll link it in the description box below. She's a speech language pathologist, so she explains it better than I can. But so this book goes through with speech to print, teaching your child to read. So it has an introduction, talks about how kids learn to read. There's a lot of information here on how kids learn to read, and there's a lot of information on how to do this program. And then there's a little pretest, and then it gets into the lessons. So each section has a lot of instructions at the beginning and different goals that you are trying to achieve in that section. And then it has the activities and the lessons that you're supposed to do with your child. And they do have the things in here that you would photocopy and then use, but you're sort of putting the lessons together yourself, which I don't mind. I think this is a really solid program. I do think it's a little bit more prep intensive than Phonics Pathways because you do have to photocopy a lot of this stuff, especially if you want to reuse this book again. And then they've got stories in here, and you can see it also builds in complexity like all phonics programs do. So Maura talks about this in the video that I'm going to link, but recent research suggests that speech to print is better for kids. It's easier for them to learn. That's just how our brains learn how to read. That's how we process things. And so if you teach your kid print to speech, a lot of kids will then organize it in a speech to print fashion in their brain. But if you start out print to speech, then you're already teaching it in the way that their brains are going to understand it. So it can be a lot easier, especially for kids who are struggling, to just start out with doing this speech to print approach. And then here, the last section here is multisyllable words, schwas, and then has multisyllable words to practice on. And then it talks at the end here about multisyllable word spelling and kind of where you go from this book. So my son is already he's in the middle of Phonics Pathways, and I'm not sure yet if I want to switch him to this or if he's so far into Phonics Pathways and he's doing well with it that I should just keep going. I'm not totally sure yet, but I do really, really like this book, and I don't see people talking about it that much. It's very affordable. Phonics Pathways is too. My kids have never struggled learning to read, so I've always tried to get a reading program that would be a systematic phonics program, but that also was budget friendly, which both of these are. So I do really like this one as well. I hope you found this helpful. As always, I will link everything in the description box below. I am an Amazon affiliate, so if you click on a link and make a purchase, I do receive a small commission. Thank you for watching.